Life and love test us all. Our community's children and the adults whom Marlon blessed this morning will be tested, both at school, on what they're learning in math and more, and also inevitably, if not already, by life and love. Life and love test us all. Those are a few of the words I spoke to a beautiful young couple as they were married here on this chancel yesterday evening about 16 hours ago. Knowing this, that we'll all be tested, there's a point in the ceremony when I ask the couple to turn and face the community gathered together to witness their commitment and their vows so that they can pause and breathe and notice the love that surrounds and holds them. When they move away from each other and slowly turn to face their family and friends, a kind of gasp travels through the pews. It's a moment of tremendous vulnerability and universal recognition. In that great moment of hope, when all dare to believe again in the promise, power, and potential of love, everyone is reminded at the same time, in the presence of grandmothers and grandfathers, of divorced and absent relatives, that everything we love will be lost. It, or even this, can't last forever. Still, or maybe even because we know this, a smile spreads from face to face as the couple accepts their support, and as friends and families also vow to be there in times of trouble. Look, and remember this moment, I say, so you will remember these are the people who will be here for you when love and life tests you, as love and life will test us all. Of course, now I stand here looking out at your beautiful faces, and I'm reminded that you are the people gathered here today, and that as a church, this is our assignment too, to be here for each other as life and love tests us all. Then after the wedding, I had one of those moments of synchronicity when I returned to the business of the day, which included catching up on the news. One of the headlines that caught my eye said, "This is a test. The eyes of the world are watching." The article was about the shooting of a 15-year-old unarmed young black man in Ferguson, Missouri this week. There are teachers who teach us lessons and give us tests we take in school after we've had time to study and prepare. And there are teachers, lessons, and tests life delivers to us without warning, which is precisely when we need to make time so we can learn the lesson life is offering us. And so we can connect with and express our own feelings. I don't know about you, but often I don't know how to respond to the news. I feel so many things at the same time, I do end up kind of numb. Helplessness and hope, rage and rationalization, my own indifference and indignation all get jumbled together in a stew of overwhelm, then cooked into a particular state of confusion, and all too often chilled then into silence. So in confusing or difficult times, personal and private, political and public, it helps me to reflect on the teachers in my life. This morning, I use the term broadly to mean both my classroom teachers and the special people whose stories and examples live on in us, shining a light ahead of us so we can see the way forward. I've been blessed with amazing teachers most of my life. The first one I want to tell you about is the one I had in 5th grade. Her name was Corinne Smythe, and I adored her. I loved her for several reasons. She may have been the first person I knew who used Ms. instead of Mrs. This was if I'm going to be truthful, the very early 70s, just as the Vietnam War was ending, just a few years after the Voting Rights Act was passed. It was actually also the year my grandmother in France called us in the United States back in the day when making an international phone call was a big deal, because she had heard about the race riots in Boston and was worried about us. Nothing dangerous was happening in the predominantly white suburb where I lived, except that 4 or 5 black kids joined our class that year when busing started, bringing students from Dorchester and Roxbury into the suburbs. Ms. Smythe was young and hip. She was an early and proud feminist, but what really made me and all of us, I think, love her is not what we called her, but what she called us. Every morning, she started our day by saying, "Good morning, people." Then she went on to tell us about what we'd be doing that day: math, reading, writing, social studies. Not kids, or boys and girls, or children. Good morning, people. I have a few fun memories of that year: a World's Fair, some math game I liked, but I have a really clear memory of how that simple word, people, made me feel. Valuable, even important. Like I had something to say, like it mattered I was there. Like we all mattered. I will never forget Ms. Smythe, never. Sometimes I use her name as a clue for how to retrieve my forgotten passwords. And I'm convinced that the sense of dignity, meaning, worth, and joy she transmitted to us in her daily greeting not only inspired us to work harder, but also released us from fear. We weren't afraid to fail in her classroom. And we knew even if we did, we would be treated with respect, and there would always be a way for us to try again and be redeemed. Now, of course, like you, I've also had bad teachers and learned lessons from them as well. In high school, so you'd think I would have been maturing by then. But as Shannon said, maybe not. We'd get to the room early so we could turn the hands on the clock forward in Madame's class because we were always dying to get out of there. She was unhappy and cranky most of the time, and because she showed us little respect, we in return had little respect for her. She thought she was the only teacher in the room and that we were only students. Madame forgot, or maybe never knew, that we're all teachers all the time, and we're all students all the time. From the moment we're born until we take our last breath, we are destined to learn and to teach. No matter what role we're playing in the moment, patient or doctor, parent or child, leader or follower, protester or law enforcer, no matter where we find ourselves, how old or young we are, how long or short a time we've been members or ministers, if we're alive, we're learning, and we will be tested. If we're in relationship, which we all are, we're teaching something. The question is, what? What are we teaching the people around us with our words and our actions, with our silences or our indifference? Honestly, I don't know what I can do personally about the situation in Ferguson, Missouri, yet. But I know I believe in the power of people to respond with courage to the moral challenges of their time. And I know it's dangerous to stick our heads in the sand and pretend we don't see what's happening around us. I know this in my bones because of the example of two of the most powerful teachers in my life, my mother, Florence, and her father, my grandfather, Pierre, which means rock in French. So I want to tell you a story this morning of war and reconciliation, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, thus making a difference, because it's the kind of story I need to remember and hear again and again and again. My mother was raised in France and was 8 years old when war broke out again in Europe. I know the Second World War through the eyes of an 8-year-old girl. In my mind's eye, I can see Florence laying outside on the grass on her birthday in late August 1939, playing with crickets under the apricot trees, while her parents and the other adults, distracted by the declaration of war, huddled inside around the radio, highly anxious about what it would mean for the family. And so they all forgot to recognize or celebrate her birth. What is this thing called war that my birthday doesn't matter anymore? Little Florence must have wondered. And all too soon, she would understand. Pierre, who had fought as a teenager in the First World War, returned to the army and was sent to guard the border. When the German army successfully invaded with hardly a skirmish and promptly occupied northern France, Pierre returned to his job as an engineer in a town a few hours north of Paris. Over time, fed up by the daily challenges of living under German occupation and alarmed at the course of world events, Pierre finally joined the resistance. Since he knew how to build roads and bridges, he was also skilled at blowing them up. Meanwhile, my mother, Florence, was going to school and swim practice, hiding in bomb shelters, and busily hating the Germans. When German soldiers came to her school to pass out new pencils, she proudly avoided making eye contact with each and every one and refused their precious gift of a new pencil. And by great strength of will, she even refused their gift of precious and rare chocolate. She confessed to me years later that they actually were very handsome and looked very nice. She wanted to like them, but she knew she must hate them. It was her duty as a daughter of France. Pierre was finally captured on April 4th, 1944. His captors wanted not only him, but his collaborators, and so he was tortured, waterboarded, put in a small dark space, and then yanked out and interrogated under bright lights, and more. He finally, miraculously to me, escaped from prison the day before his scheduled execution, survived his harrowing escape and the final weeks of the war, although he was injured, which is how Pierre became a war hero, un grand compagnon de la libération, we say in France. And then, as Le Général Charles de Gaulle turned his attention to the rebuilding of a nation, he appointed my grandfather governor of an eastern region of France. Within weeks of the end of the war, Pierre told his family they were moving to go and live in Germany. And my mother, now 13 years old, rededicated herself to hatred. She vowed to never, ever shake the hand of any German person, ever. But love and life test us all. And Pierre was a man of character and morals. And so my family packed their things into a car and started their drive to Germany. As they drove across the Rhine, my mother repeated her promise to herself over and over again, steeling her heart. I will never look into the eyes of, accept a gift from, or shake the hand of any German, she told herself. Only a week later, Pierre told his family they were going to visit the local museum. And he said to his 4 children, "You will be polite, and you will shake the hand of every German we meet. And you will be especially gracious with the director of the museum, who was a resistor." A shiver of doubt passed through Florence's mind. A resistor? Were all Germans not the enemy? And when the time came, under direct orders from her father, my mother did extend her hand. And in that moment of contact, she tells me something changed inside her. She felt the frailty of hate, and then the resilience of respect, along with the force of forgiveness, both of which are just, oh, so close to love. She wouldn't have used those words then, but in the years since, as she has told and retold this and so many other stories, the moral of each has become more and more clear to both of us. First, hate takes a tremendous amount of energy to maintain. It's not in our natures to hold on to hate. We must will it for it to last. Second, even in the worst of times, people need each other. Even across war-torn borders and great chasms of guilt, regret, anger, shame, and blame, we will extend our hands again and again, reaching out for each other, hoping against hope to reconnect and rebuild what has been broken. This is in all our natures. It helps me to remember this when life and love are testing us all again. It reminds me of another story I'll share with you this morning. It's a story of a young boy raised in Bessemer, Alabama, in the early 60s, during the civil rights struggles that changed the face of these United States forever. This boy wasn't rich. In fact, he was rather poor. He grew up on 18th Avenue, the street that marked the line between where white people and black people lived. When desegregation was finally forced on the schools of Alabama by order of the Supreme Court, many white parents enrolled their kids in Christian academies, which sprang up overnight all over the city. This boy's parents couldn't afford to do that. And quickly, his school changed from being 100% white to 85% black. The boy, disturbed and saddened by how his parents and neighbors reacted to the changes, he witnessed white parents throw bricks and Coke bottles at the heads of young black children, his classmates, as they got off school buses and walked toward his school building. This young boy made a pact with his best friend, who happened to be black, just as he happened to be white. Their plan focused on the walk home from school each day. One day, they would walk through the black side of the street, 18th Avenue, until Willie got to his house first. And on the next day, they would walk through the white neighborhood on the other side of the street until Ricky got to his house. They promised each other they would walk home from school each day along those routes, holding hands. They intended to teach the adults around them that everything was really okay, and that if the two of them were best friends, and if people could see that they were best friends, surely their parents would learn that they could be friends too. The Ricky in the story is my husband. But a little warning here, just to protect yourself, never call him that. And I cherish the image of him seeing and claiming the power he had as a boy to respond to the moral confusion and violence he witnessed. I cherish it because it reminds me that even when we think we are helpless or powerless, there is almost always something we can do. It's what I know when I look out at your faces, you, who have become my greatest teachers over the last 4 years. You, who have received a diagnosis of cancer, faced treatment like a warrior, been unshakable and anchored in your love for your family and for your God. You who still come to church and ask me if you can start a support group for people with cancer, transforming your own pain into a greater purpose. And you who have lost a spouse recently, and you a child a few years ago. Still, you show up at church, your heart's aching, still you give to others. I see you work with our children and our partner schools, serve dinners to the homeless, and slowly, day by day, find your footing among the living again. And you have lost your job and broken up with your girlfriend, and still you come to church, serve on a committee, volunteer your time to work in our memorial garden. And I watch amazed and inspired as your hearts heal, soften, and are willing once again to risk love. When I despair that life asks too much of us, that the test is too hard, and worry that we will not be able to meet the challenges before us, I make myself remember how people have met the challenges of yesterday and how they are meeting them today. We are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. So this school year, as the school year begins, we are called to remember that no matter what our scripted role in the real world is, we are all teachers and we are all students all the time. We are role models for each other, and we rely on each other for respect, inspiration, safety, and support. I hope you'll take some time during the rest of August to remember who were your best and who were your worst teachers and think about why. Remember your own family stories of courage and of cowardice. Set aside some time to reflect and to decide for yourself what you want your legacy to be. You can count on it that love and life will test you. You may not be called to become a hero. There are probably few of us who will be decorated with ribbons and stars for heroic acts, but that doesn't mean our actions haven't been heroic in the sense that they have saved someone else's life. I bet that each and every one of you are this kind of hero, because I know you all have hands that you sometimes sit on and other times tighten into fists, hands which you also wave and open, hands with which you shake other people's hands, hands with which you grasp a hold of others and hang on to for as long as it takes. Let us begin this school year then, people, this year of learning and teaching, knowing we need each other, remembering to reach out to shake or hold a stranger's hand because, as I also said to the young married couple, we are always stronger together than alone. Amen.